This is SMNI's Business and Politics with Dante Klink Ang. Senator Gatchalian, we've talked about very important things. Of course, the bigger question is how do we afford all of this? Now, you're going to be chairing another important committee alongside Basic Education, Ways and Means.
Yes.
What are some of the challenges that you see going into that assignment?
I'll remove my education hat and put my Ways and Means
Your
hat.
finance and...
I'm slated to chair that committee. Like you said, it's a very important committee because the committee is in charge of raising revenues for the country and as well as making sure that collection is efficient. So the track that I'm looking at is number one, efficiency and administration. And I've been doing a lot of consultation with the business community, with experts in taxation. And me, myself, I come from a business family, so we also have some experience in this type of things.
And you're sensitive to some of those proposals coming out.
Correct.
Which is more taxes. So.
Correct. And one thing that is quite pervasive or constantly coming out is corruption, abuse, and efficiency. And it's very hard, Klink, to shove down to the throats of our taxpayers new taxes. If
when
these
you haven't
things,
addressed these leakages.
If there are leakages happening, there's abuse happening, and there are inefficiencies happening, it's very difficult for our taxpayers to swallow that. So we should address that. I know it's very complex. I know I cannot finish it in one go, but at least show the public that we're serious in fighting corruption and abuses inside government and making the lives of our taxpayers efficient. My example yesterday when I was invited is, if we can buy stuff in Shopee as easy as clicking a few buttons, tax paying should be as easy as
BIR.
Correct. Tax paying should be as easy as collecting as pressing a few buttons. So my first order of business is to improve efficiency, to make sure that there are mechanisms to fight corruptions, there are mechanisms to report corruption, and for government to address all of this. And then the second objective is to look at other ways of raising revenue without actually raising taxes. For example, privatization is one. Creating fiscal space through reducing expenditure is another one. So these are the things that we can look at before we actually think of raising taxes.
That's very interesting. You seem to be on the same page with the Finance Secretary, Benjamin Jokno, who seems to be favoring more efficiency rather than new tax measures. But do you think that, without the privatization, just efficiency alone, is that going to be a substantial assistance, you think?
There's no hard number, Klink, in terms of leakage. I see several numbers flying around, as low as 300 billion, as high as 600 billion. Right. When I say leakages, that's from abuses, inefficiencies, and also smuggling. Smuggling is also a huge leakage, and that's part of loss in revenue.
Right,
foregone revenue. So what I'm looking at is, first of all, the process. Is it easy? Is it transparent? Is it clear to our taxpayers? Number two, mechanisms. Are there mechanisms for taxpayers to report? And then number three, action from our government institutions to hold government employees to account. So we have to make sure that these mechanisms are in place so that there's confidence for our taxpayers to continue to pay. But I've talked to a lot of the tax experts, even business community. This is quite prevalent. The comment on corruption is quite prevalent, and we need to address that.
Right. Again, along the lines of efficiency, how are we doing with maybe formalizing the gray economy? Because it seems to be shrinking quite a little bit, but it's still substantial at almost 50%. I mean, it seems like, if you're looking for revenue, that's something you could bring in. But I guess, as you said, the challenge is some of those are criminal, as you said, smuggling and others. But what can be done about those?
Well, enforcement is first of all the mechanisms. We need to make sure that the mechanisms are there. And there are now using internet and using the digital space, we can actually put up mechanisms that will be easy for our taxpayers to report. And then second is enforcement. Honest to goodness enforcement. And that's why the appointments of key people is very important in this particular case, because they're the ones who will be enforcing that. The third is, again, making it easy. Klink, I had the opportunity to visit the customs of Singapore, the Customs Bureau of the Singapore.
That's the model of efficiency.
When I went there, I was looking for people. There's none. No, there's no customs broker. There's no customs broker. There's no people who are withdrawing the goods. And I asked the guy who was touring us, and he said in Singapore everything is done through internet, and everything is transacted through internet. They don't encourage face-to-face transactions because obviously
that's when you have mischief.
Correct.
These opportunities.
Correct.
For mischief,
That's the opportunity for all of these things happening. So they encourage transaction reporting through the internet. So my point there is technology will play a very big role, and we have to make sure that our collecting agencies are using technology to improve efficiency and also to reduce opportunities for corruption.
You mentioned privatization, and I've heard you discuss this also in your other interviews. I can't remember if it's CNN Philippines or ANC, but you specifically mentioned casinos. Were you referring to PAGCOR? Is that something that you think can be privatized? Because in our editorials, we've said that government should get out of gambling or the gaming business and just stick to regulating the industry. But is that something that you were looking at, or were we thinking differently?
Well, I always believe that government should get out of business and just go into the business of governance.
Right.
Government should stick to governance, and business should be given to the businessmen or business community.
Totally agree with you.
So I think the opportunities for privatization is there, to raise revenue. PAGCOR is one. Duty free is another one. Right now, government is into the business of retail, which should not be the case.
That's right.
They can actually sell that entire business and raise revenues.
And probably be duped, come up with something better.
Correct. In Thailand, they sell the license for duty free. So it's not government that actually operates the retail outlets, but it's a private sector, but obviously government gets a portion of their income. So there's other ways of raising revenue through getting out of business. And these are opportunities for government to also get out of the operational side of business, because it's also prone to corruption, it's also prone to abuse, and government is a bad businessman or a bad business entity.
Yeah. Well, do you think somehow that we privatized the wrong industries before? I mean, in previous governments, and maybe look at some of the things that you're mentioning now.
Hindi naman.
Retail and of course gaming, right?
Hindi naman, Klink. For example, when government went out of the oil distribution business, they privatized Petron and the others. I think that's the right move, personally. Because
so you feel that paid off?
Yes, but we should also make sure that there are ample regulations. In a deregulated environment, that's fine. But in a regulated environment, we have to make sure that the regulators are functioning, and we have to make sure that they're well funded. Case in point will be the Energy Regulatory Commission. We have to make sure that they're well funded, because they're the watchdog of the industry, and they can only function if they give them enough funding.
And not captured.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, then regulatory capture happens, and then problems will come out.
I wanted to ask you this question because you were previously mayor of Valenzuela, an important city in Metro Manila. And you grew up in the States, and you're probably familiar, or you probably heard of cities in the U.S. issuing municipal bonds for projects within their cities.
Yeah.
Is that something that can be done here? Is that something that requires new law, perhaps?
Local finance is very regulated in our country. We can only go to banks. Government banks, for that matter. In fact, I filed a bill to to loosen that up, no? To allow local government units to transact with universal banks, because universal banks can offer lower interest rates.
Right.
They have more innovative products such as bonds,
Right.
but still protects the money of our taxpayers. No?
Right.
So you're absolutely correct. It's a very limited space.
I
here
would
in our
think that
country.
would provide some relief, right? To
Yeah.
at least local government infrastructure
Correct.
spending, right?
Yeah, that's why I filed that bill to loosen up the regulation in local government finance, so that local governments can go to other entities, other banks that can offer innovative products at lower cost and finance at longer terms. When for example, infrastructure need longer terms
Right,
of financing.
Right.
Yeah.
Very exciting. But we have to take one more break, Senator. I apologize for this. We'll be right back with Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. You're watching SMNI. This is Business and Politics.